Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the lecture hall. Please take your seats. We have a really fascinating session ahead of us today.
We really do.
Yeah, we are going to be opening the file on a very specific, very volatile 60-day window that quite literally reshaped the Second World War. We are looking closely at January 1st to February 28th, 1941.
It is great to be with you all. And, reshaped is exactly the right word for this period.
Mm-hmm.
Often in history classes, we tend to focus on the massive set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Stalingrad, D-Day, Midway.
The big cinematic moment.
Exactly. But those events are actually the results of the decisions and the strategic shifts that happened in quiet, tense periods, exactly like the one we were discussing today.
Right. If you look at the map on January 1st, 1941, the war is, it's primarily European.
Pretty much.
But by February 28th, the conflict has bled deep into Africa. It's completely consuming the Balkans, and the major powers are sitting in smoke-filled rooms deciding the fate of the world for the next 5 years. We're calling today's session the strategic pivot.
Because everyone is pivoting. Germany is looking to secure its flanks before doing anything bigger in the east. Britain is, they're trying to figure out how to stretch their limited resources across 3 different continents.
Yeah.
And the United States, while officially neutral, is secretly starting to pick a side.
So let's orient ourselves for a second. What is the state of the war in early 1941? Britain is still standing, somewhat miraculously, honestly, after the fall of France. Italy, Mussolini's empire is, struggling, is putting it politely.
Struggling is very generous. Italy is essentially collapsing in North Africa, and they're completely bogged down in Greece.
Right.
And this weakness forces Germany to act.
Mm.
That is the actual engine driving these 2 months. It's German intervention to prop up a failing ally.
So we have 3 main theaters to cover in this lesson today. First, the shifting sands of North and East Africa. That's victory, followed by a very dangerous new arrival. Second, the powder keg of the Balkans. Lots of diplomatic arm twisting and political chaos there.
Mm-hmm.
And third, the hitting war. The secret meetings happening far away in Washington.
Let's start with the sand. The African fronts.
Right. Now, to really understand January 1941, you have to understand that the British are actually on the offensive. On January 19th, British troops initiate the invasion of Eritrea.
Which is in East Africa. And geographically, this is crucial for the class to understand. The Italians held colonies in East Africa: Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somaliland.
And the British needed those gone.
They absolutely needed to dismantle this empire to secure the Red Sea. If you control the Red Sea, you control the supply route to the Suez Canal. It was basically a massive cleanup operation, totally essential for logistics.
And the British are moving fast there. But the real headline grabber is happening further north, right along the Mediterranean coast. Operation Compass.
Operation Compass is a complete masterclass in logistics and mobility. It's something military academies are still studying today.
Technically, Operation Compass ends on February 9th, 1941. But throughout January, it is just this endless catalog of Italian disasters. The British Commonwealth forces, we're talking Australians, Indians, British troops, they are completely routing the Italian army.
It is a seesaw effect in terms of advantages.
Mm.
The Italians had the numbers, they outnumbered the British significantly.
Oh, a lot, yeah.
But the British had the morale, the training, and just massive tactical superiority. They captured Tobruk, which is a vital port. They pushed deep into Libya, taking the Cyrenaica region. We're talking about capturing huge numbers of prisoners here. The Italian Tenth Army effectively ceased to exist.
It really looked like the British might just sweep Mussolini out of North Africa entirely. I mean, the road to Tripoli seemed completely open. It was a moment of really high optimism.
And that optimism is dangerous.
Always is.
Because while the British were busy celebrating the fall of Benghazi in early February, the dynamic was shifting behind the scenes. Germany could not afford to let Italy collapse completely. If Italy falls, the southern flank of Europe is totally exposed.
So, Hitler makes a move that haunts the British for the next 2 years. February 12th, 1941. This is a date that should be circled in red ink in your notebooks.
Absolutely.
A German general lands in Tripoli, Libya. He steps off the plane with a mission to take command of a newly formed unit, the Afrika Korps. His name is Erwin Rommel. If you are enjoying this video, please watch it until the end. It helps the channel a lot and encourages us to continue our work.
The Desert Fox. Though he hadn't really earned the nickname just yet, but his arrival changes the entire chemistry of the war instantly.
It's incredible, isn't it? Just one man and one new unit. But the psychological shift on the ground is palpable.
It really is.
Hmm.
You have to contrast the previous months with what happens next. The Italians were demoralized, retreating, surrendering in droves. Then Rommel arrives, and he brings German discipline, better equipment, specifically better anti-tank guns and tanks, but mostly he brings a highly aggressive tactical doctrine.
But here is the interesting thing when you look at the military records. He wasn't actually sent there to conquer Egypt immediately, was he?
No, absolutely not. His orders from Berlin were strictly defensive. He was sent to establish a Spurlinie, a blocking line. The German high command told him, basically, just keep the British away from Tripoli. Don't do anything crazy.
Right, they had other priorities.
Exactly. They were focused on Russia. They didn't want a big war in Africa.
But Rommel didn't really do holding the line.
No, he certainly didn't. He's a practitioner of Bewegungskrieg, maneuver warfare. He lands, he looks at the map, he sees the British are actually overextended, and we'll get to exactly why they were overextended in just a moment, and he decides to completely ignore his orders. He starts planning to attack almost immediately.
This moment, mid-February 1941, it's really the end of the easy war in the desert for the British.
It marks the total transition from a colonial cleanup operation to a high-intensity, mechanized slugfest. The desert becomes this massive chessboard for tank warfare.
Now, you mentioned the British were overextended. Why didn't they just keep driving west and finish the job before Rommel got settled?
Because of our second theater, the Balkans.
The Balkan chessboard. Let's move our attention across the Mediterranean to Greece.
Greece had been fighting off an Italian invasion since October 1940, and they were doing a magnificent job of it. The Greeks said oxynodi to Mussolini, and they meant it. They physically pushed the Italians back into the mountains of Albania.
It was actually the first real land victory for the Allies in the war.
It was. But then on January 29, 1941, tragedy strikes. Ioannis Metaxas dies.
This is a critical blow. Metaxas was a dictator, yes, but he was also the architect of that resistance.
A very savvy strategist.
Exactly. He understood the incredibly precarious position Greece was in. He knew how to fight Italy without provoking Germany too early. So his death leaves a massive leadership void at the absolute worst possible moment.
And why was it the worst moment?
Right.
Because the Germans were coming.
Right.
Everyone knew it. Hitler was moving troops into position to bail out Mussolini in Greece, just like he was doing in Africa. The Greek army was exhausted, their supplies were low, they desperately needed help.
And on that exact same day, January 29th, Winston Churchill makes a monumental decision. He formally accepts the Greek request for aid.
This is the pivot point for the British. This is the decision that directly links Africa and the Balkans. To help Greece, Churchill has to take troops, tanks, and planes away from the victorious army in North Africa.
So literally, just as Rommel is arriving in Tripoli, the British are pulling their absolute best units out of the desert to send them across the sea to Greece.
Precisely. It's a strategic dilemma with no good answer. If Churchill abandons Greece, he loses a brave ally and credibility in the eyes of the world. It looks like Britain will just let its friends die.
Which you can't have.
Right. But if he sends troops, he drastically weakens his position in Libya and risks losing both theaters entirely.
And history tells us he chose to honor the alliance. He sent the troops. And as we know, it didn't stop the German advance in Greece, and it gave Rommel exactly the opening he needed in Africa.
Many military historians argue it was a noble error. A political necessity, perhaps, but a military disaster. It halted the momentum in North Africa right when they could have permanently secured the coast.
While all this is happening in Athens and London, the Axis powers are busy expanding their own roster. Let's look at Bulgaria.
Bulgaria's in a really tight spot. They are surrounded, they have German troops massing on their borders, and they also have historical grievances, a territory they lost in the First World War that they desperately want back.
So on January 20th, the Bulgarian cabinet takes a vote.
They vote to formally align with the Tripartite Pact, the Axis alliance.
It's a survival strategy for them.
Exactly. They see the German war machine rolling through Europe, and they decide it's better to be a pathway for German troops than a target.
This prepares the ground for German troops to just cross Bulgaria to get to Greece.
Yeah.
It's effectively checkmate for the Greek defense before the battle even physically starts.
And we can't ignore Romania here either. Just a few days later, January 21st and 23rd, the country erupts into chaos.
The Iron Guard Rebellion. This is fascinating to study because it's not allies versus Axis, it's fascists versus fascists.
It is severe internal strife within the Axis sphere. The Iron Guard was a radical, almost mystical fascist movement in Romania. They were violent, totally undisciplined, and they launched a full-scale rebellion against the head of state, General Ion Antonescu.
And Antonescu is a strict hardliner, a military man.
Right. The Iron Guard launched a pogrom in Bucharest that was shocking, even by the grim standards of the time. It was total chaos. And here's the key point for our timeline. Hitler backs Antonescu.
Wait, why? The Iron Guard were the actual ideological zealots. Wouldn't Hitler naturally prefer them?
You would think so, but Hitler needed stability. He needed discipline. But most of all, he needed oil.
Ah, the resource game.
Always. Romania was essentially the gas station for the entire German war machine. The Iron Guard was creating chaos, disrupting the economy and threatening the oil fields. Antonescu offered order. So, Hitler gave Antonescu the green light to crush the rebellion.
Which he did, brutally.
He did. And the takeaway here is vital for the class to understand. By February 1941, Antonescu has completely consolidated power. He is now firmly in control, and he owes his political survival directly to Germany. Romania becomes a highly disciplined, reliable satellite state. When Germany eventually invades the Soviet Union later that year, the Romanian army will be right there marching with them.
So the Balkans are really tightening up. Bulgaria is letting the Germans in. Romania is locked down under Antonescu, and Greece is losing its leader and bracing for impact. There is one more player in this region we should mention, Turkey.
Turkey is walking an incredible tightrope. They desperately want to stay out of this crossfire.
And on February 17th, we see the Turco-Bulgarian non-aggression declaration.
It's a piece of paper that basically says, let's not fight each other. For Turkey, it's purely about buying time. For Bulgaria, it secures their southern flank so they can focus entirely on assisting the German move into Greece. It's the diplomacy of avoiding the fire.
Let's zoom out now. We've looked at the maps of Africa and the Balkans. But there's a third map we need to unroll, the global one. This brings us to our third major topic, the hidden war and grand strategy.
While brave men were fighting and dying in the Libyan desert, men in suits were meeting secretly in Washington, D.C., starting on January 29th. These were the ABC-1 conferences.
ABC stands for American-British Conversations. Now, everyone, remember the date. January 1941. Is the United States in the war?
Not officially. Pearl Harbor is still 11 months away. The U.S. is strictly neutral. President Roosevelt is telling the American public he won't send their boys to foreign wars. But here we have senior military staff from the U.S. and the U.K. meeting in secret to plan how they would fight a war if the U.S. joined.
That sounds rather unneutral.
It was highly irregular, technically speaking. But Roosevelt and Churchill both knew the wind was blowing toward war. They needed a solid plan. And out of these specific meetings comes perhaps the most important strategic decision of the entire global conflict.
The Germany First Doctrine.
Exactly. The formal agreement that even if Japan attacks the United States, the absolute priority for the Allies would be the defeat of Nazi Germany. Germany was the industrial heart of the Axis, the most dangerous technological threat.
Think about the incredible foresight there. Before a single American shot is fired in anger, they have already decided that the road to victory goes through Berlin, not Tokyo.
It set the rhythm for all the logistics, the troop movements, the massive supply chains for the next 4 years. It ensured that Britain would not be left alone to fight Germany while America looked west across the Pacific. It was a victory of cold logic over emotion.
While the Allies are being so rational and strategic in Washington, Hitler as well, being Hitler.
He is dreaming very big.
February 17th, 1941. Hitler issues a strategic order. And when you read the text of this order, you really have to double-check the geography. He wants to plan an operational advance through Afghanistan to attack British India.
It sounds totally fantastical today. A modern, mechanized army marching through the Hindu Kush. Logistics were already a nightmare just within Europe. But it shows you the precise mindset in Berlin in early 1941.
Just pure hubris.
Confidence. Absolute, unshakable confidence. They felt they had already won in Europe. They were actively preparing to crush the Soviet Union. And after that, why not dismantle the British Empire in India from the inside? It illustrates perfectly that for Hitler, this wasn't just a European war anymore. It was a war for complete global hegemony.
It's terrifying to think about, really. If the Soviet Union had collapsed quickly, if Rommel had managed to take the Suez Canal, that path to India doesn't look quite so impossible on a map.
That is the real danger of this specific period. The Axis powers were at the absolute height of their ambition. They held all the initiative. The Allies were purely reacting, plugging holes, shifting troops from a victory in Africa to a defeat in Greece, just desperately trying to hold the line.
So let's bring this all together for today's session. We've looked closely at January and February 1941.
A critical period of transition.
We started with the British seemingly winning everything in Africa. The Italians were on the run. But by the end of February, the board has been completely reset.
Rommel is in Tripoli, totally revitalizing the Axis threat. The British have deliberately paused their advance to pivot to Greece.
In the Balkans, the diplomatic noose has tightened. Bulgaria and Romania are firmly in the German camp. Greece is isolated, mourning Metaxas, and just waiting for the hammer to fall.
And in the background, the Americans are quietly stepping into their role as the arsenal of democracy, officially agreeing that Germany must be stopped first.
It really emphasizes the sheer complexity of alliance warfare. We so often think of nations acting purely in their own self-interest, but here we see the British sacrificing a sure win in Libya just to help a Greek ally. We see the Germans diverting vital resources to save the Italians.
It proves that you simply cannot view these theaters in isolation. A death in Athens directly impacts the movement of tanks in Libya. A secret meeting in Washington decides the future flow of supplies to the Soviet Union. It is all one massive, interconnected tapestry.
And that is the central lesson for today. The war wasn't won or lost in a single battle. It was defined by these strategic pivots, how nations managed their resources, their fragile alliances, and their timing when the pressure was at its absolute highest.
The board is set for 1941 to be a brutal year. The invasion of the Soviet Union is looming, Pearl Harbor is on the horizon, but the peace were placed in these crucial winter months.
One final thought for you to take with you from this class. We mentioned Hitler's wild ambition for India and the highly pragmatic Germany-first strategy. Think deeply about the information gap there. The Allies were coordinating a realistic, long-term survival plan based on industrial capacity and logistics. The Axis was planning fantastical conquests based almost entirely on ideological confidence. In the long run, does superior planning always beat superior confidence? Or was it just a matter of who had more factories? That's something for you to mull over.
It certainly raises the question of whether the war was won on the battlefield or in the supply depots and conference rooms.
Indeed. That concludes our analysis of early 1941. Thank you for your attention today.
Class dismissed.
If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell to be notified about new videos, click the like button, and share the video with your colleagues, as this helps us maintain the channel. Thank you.